Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another awesome episode of the Mission Men Podcast, brought to you by Mission Media Group. The Mission Men Podcast, the podcast about literally nothing, essentially everything, and pretty much anything in between. Man, we got a great show for you today, guys. And we just want to take a second and say thank you. What are you doing? what? For those listening, John's like convulsing. What are you doing?
I got bored and I started doing stuff in the camera to see myself.
Yeah.
There you go. Excellent.
Well, we appreciate you, John. Thanks.
It's going to be a great podcast today.
So, yeah, we're super excited about today. Let's get deep is what we're going to title this today.
Personal.
We're getting really personal because there's some things that we want to share with you guys that we think a lot of people can relate to, and so we're gonna dive in a little bit. So
we don't want to just be that podcast that shows all of the good stuff of our life, the things that are funny and the things that are shallow. We want to go deep today. We want to show you that we're human. As much as you might think that we're all perfect and we're these great, outstanding.
Aren't you, John? Aren't you perfect?
I'm close,
but
we're not perfect.
Okay.
And we have some things to share with you guys. Why are you confused?
Brandon's face is great.
I can't tell if you're serious or not.
I think you were kind of serious, weren't you?
It was a mixture.
It was a mixture. I thought you were okay. Okay.
It was a mixture, but we do want to. Okay, now I'm serious. Okay. Now we are saying though that we're not perfect and we have struggles,
flaws.
We have flaws, we have things we deal with, and we deal with them openly. And fortunately, the Lord's brought us to a place where we're secure enough to talk about it.
Well, these we haven't dealt with openly.
Well,
I think for the most part,
I know.
The things that we're going to share.
Yeah. There's not public, right?
These are not public things.
Right.
Like I don't go around talking about this stuff.
Right. So we got it's a juicy episode. No, it's going to be
Please
fun.
don't ever describe an episode like that.
I'm sorry. I will not.
Leave those comments to me. I'm the one who needs to get punished.
That's
for stuff
true.
Like that.
I just channel my John.
He's been around me too long today. We literally have spent like the whole day together, actually.
Literally
Yes.
since 11 o'clock you came over.
Yeah, I've
this
been
morning.
with Paul since 11.
And what time is it right now?
Almost 11 p.m.
PM.
So, we first of all, before we dive into all that, we just want to say thank you guys. We just so appreciate all the support, all the comments, all the shares. If you guys like what we do and have fun with it, if you don't mind, leaving a 5-star review here and there a little bit, maybe sharing with your friends, we'd really appreciate that. And we just, we just have a lot of fun doing this. And we just hope it blesses you guys as you listen, whether it makes you laugh, makes you think, and hopefully both. Right? That's always the goal.
And my Venmo is John Freese 1. And
John has a mustache.
I do have a mustache. I'm just so glad you guys can see it now. Because I used to always say during our previous records that I'd be like, oh, watch this, watch that. You're going to watch this podcast. And Paul would be like, they're listening, you moron. And I'd be like, oh, that's true. Now you're watching.
That was so your dad. Sorry. For anybody that doesn't know John's dad.
That was your dad. That was your dad.
So your dad.
100%.
Just
Let's
like
go, Dad.
No, like the head shake and stuff. That was
You did every thing.
Really?
Every mannerism.
He'd be proud of me because
That
we
was
don't
Pastor.
we don't like football together and we don't like fishing together, and that's kind of his two favorite things. So at least I act like him.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, there's definitely a lot of mannerisms.
Similarities.
And,
He's just
Oh my
learned how to
gosh.
filter things better than I have most of the time.
Yes.
yeah. Well, he's got more time on.
However, me and his brother are very similar.
Okay, we'll leave that alone.
Anyways,
But shout out Dave. But yeah,
Whoa.
So I'm really excited about today's episode. I think it's important in life to find, people that you feel comfortable sharing deep and personal things with. And actually, it's interesting because Paul shared his with us just kind of before we started taping. And I never knew that. Like, I had no idea. So it's just kind of cool to learn something about someone, and you might be able to relate to it more than you think, or when you're in that spot, you think nobody can relate to you, right? But there's so many people that are, have something that they're not proud of, or maybe they're working through, or, whatever. So, I guess with that, Paul, you want to start us off?
Sure. No, not at all.
that's the beauty of this episode.
Someone has to start.
Right.
Here's the deal. for me, growing up when I was younger, I kind of had this situation happen in my life earlier in life. And I kind of, it was the thing you grew out of. Mm-hmm. So I kind of grew out of it. But then as I got older, starting probably in my 40s, I would say, this is the kind of thing that kept me from, people say I'm really quiet, especially in public places, I'm really quiet. And especially at church, people say I'm really super, super quiet until they get to know me and stuff like that.
Right.
Then they hear this podcast.
Yeah, then they hear the podcast.
Right.
But, one of the things that started kind of when I was in my 40s, I guess it was really started to come and I started to notice it more. I don't know if you, well, there it goes. So I don't know if you ever noticed, like when I'm talking, you will hear me, I have this really bad stutter or stammer. And it really stopped me from talking a lot.
Right.
Wow.
Because I didn't want to be made fun of. I thought I sounded crazy. And it was like I'm stuttering and I'm stammering and I'm trying to get over my words. And it played a deep part in my head. It was in my head all the time. And I'm sure most people didn't even notice. But even when you're listening to me talking right now, you can kind of hear it because I stop and I do this little, this crazy part where it gets really bad when you hear me kind of doing this cluck sound with my thing. And I don't know if you've heard that before, but I've done it. You probably heard it every once in a while.
Yeah.
It's totally embarrassing for me. And it really shut me down in a lot of different ways. And I kind of kind of live through my music and I just play and I do my music because I don't, it's like, I'm not doing this. But it really manifested itself. There's that word. But it really came out. I shouldn't say, I'm not even going to use that word, but it really came out. So when you're in church, especially being on the praise team, your mom who leads the praise team,
right?
She'll randomly call on people to pray. And a lot of people thought that I just didn't want to pray.
Right.
It was like, oh, you just don't want to do it. You don't want to do it. And what people don't realize is the reason why I didn't want to do it is because I didn't want to start stuttering. Not because I was stuttering because I was nervous, because I'm not nervous.
Right.
But I was like, if I start stuttering, then who's listening to me? Who can hear that? Is people looking at me? And da-da-da-da-da-da. And I would just, and your mom would know this more than anybody else, whenever she would call on people, and I knew when she was going to do it because she did it in the same spot every single time during service, I would either make myself like scarce so she couldn't see me, or I would just hide.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because I didn't want to pray. I mean, I pray all the time.
Right.
Yeah. But it's like when I pray and stutter to myself at home is one thing, but when I'm doing it outside in public, and it took a toll, a heavy toll on me to the point where I completely kind of shut down from public talking. I mean, some people's social media is they're really, really active, and you won't see me talking on anything. You rarely. This podcast, and here's the reason why I decided that I wanted to do this.
Oh, wow.
There was a reason for this, and Lisa will tell you because I told her about this, and I said one of the reasons why I wanted to do this because I wanted to work through this.
Oh, cool.
I literally said, because she was like, because I told her, I said, I'm just afraid about the stutter thing. It'll be on, you'll be able to hear it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I said, but I want to do it because I want to kind of work through this. Wow. And the podcast is going to help me.
That's dope.
Almost like kind of a way to, what's the word I'm looking for?
Put it in the devil's face that you're overcoming it.
I'm overcoming it. I'm attacking it head on.
Yeah.
And I'm not afraid of it.
Right.
Even though you're going to hear me do it. And if you ever go back, if you want to rewind these podcasts back, you're going to hear it. Because I've done it so many times. I don't know if you guys ever noticed it.
No. I'm just being real. Like I when you told me that, I was shocked. I'm like, what? Really?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah, I noticed it, but I never made me think about it twice. Like I just kind of thought, whatever. He just messed up a word.
No, it's not messing up a word. So what happens is,
I know what happened. I hear it, but I don't ever think twice about it. Like it just, I just keep listening to you. I never.
So this for me is almost like my
way of working through it.
Way of working through, but there's another term, kind of when you're kind of. I can't think of the term that I'm trying to think of it now, but it's a way of working through it. Yes, let's call it that.
Okay.
And it's my form of dealing with the issue. Now, I totally believe in healing, and I totally believe that I'm going to be completely healed to this.
Yeah, you will.
Yeah.
And I know it's going to happen.
Right.
But for these last several years, because it's gotten worse as I gotten older. So it's not something that, here's the crazy part. Like right now I'm talking and it's flowing.
Yeah.
So when I get to the point where I'm talking about something that is more personal, it doesn't happen as much.
Right.
I don't know if that makes any sense.
Interesting.
When you open up more?
When I open up more, it doesn't happen as much. When I'm talking to you and talking about things and I'm actually and I have to say things in a certain way, like for example, praying is very personal,
Right.
but when you do it in front of people, it's a little different.
Yeah, sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And that's when everything goes haywire in my head. And it changes my whole everything. It changes everything. So no, I'm not hiding from praying when you see me at church.
Right.
It's funny too, the last time it happened. So one of the ways that I dealt with it, another way, is that was part of my fear of going on missions. People don't realize that. So when it wasn't about,
I was going to bring that up. Actually.
It wasn't about wanting to lead people and to cry. I wanted to do all that.
Yeah.
The part that I did not want to do is speak.
Wow.
Because I know if I started speaking, then the stuttering, when the stuttering starts, it gets worse and worse and worse and worse as I start to talk.
You know what I remember?
What?
Is whenever we had the missions trip last year and we had the meetings before it and we did the prayer walk.
Yes.
Whenever you prayed in the mic, I don't think you stuttered once. And I know you were probably not excited about praying on the mic in front of all of our team members. Because before we go on the missions trip, we do a lot of things that kind of dip your toes in the water of getting uncomfortable before you actually get uncomfortable on the missions field.
Yeah.
And so I think I don't remember you stuttering, but I remember knowing that you don't like talking in front of people and stuff at that time. So I'm sure that was an act of boldness there for you.
Well, and I know Miss Paula didn't understand. And Pastor James they were making me do things, and they were forcing me out of my comfort zone,
Sure.
which is what they do, and I loved that part.
Right.
But it was that wasn't the uncomfortable part for me.
Right.
They didn't realize that, but that wasn't, and I didn't talk because I don't talk about this. I've never shared this with anybody ever.
Yeah.
I mean, Lisa knows.
Right.
My daughter knows.
Sure.
The only two people that know.
Wow. Right. Wow.
And now we know.
And now everybody knows.
Well, thanks for sharing that.
But the thing about it is with the missions, and I think the reason why when I finally got into the classrooms, because one of the comfortable things for me back in the day, I was a school teacher. I don't know if you knew this or not.
Oh, no.
I was a school teacher.
Really?
In California, I taught school in high school. I was a school teacher.
Really?
And I did all the music classes and everything like that. So being around kids, I was comfortable around that.
Sure.
So when we were going to the classrooms with the kids,
Yeah.
I was fine.
Wow.
I could lead them to the Lord. Not a problem. And I didn't realize that until I got in the classroom, and I realized, and that's part of the life-changing part of missions when I came back. I talked about how I was talking more, and I started to actually unwind and kind of actually do this. And even though I stuttered in certain instances, I was forcing myself to do it.
Right.
Because I realized this is not that deep.
No.
It's not that deep. Even though it still kind of gets in my head and bothers me every once in a while, I realized it was not that deep, and the power of that missions trip really was amazing. I wrote your dad a long letter. I mean, I didn't tell him about that stuttering part, but
wow,
part about that was that whole thing.
Well, I mean, I think just knowing you have a really good voice in people's lives, and you have a big impact on people's lives. You know a decent amount of people, and you're able to connect with people really well, and you're able to lead, and you're also, like I said, you're able to impact people more than your average person can impact people. So I think that when the enemy tries to attack you with that, he knows what I just said.
Well, he's just trying to silence you, right?
That's what I'm saying, because am I wrong about the fact that Paul is one of the smartest guys ever?
I don't know about that.
No.
And am I wrong when he's also one of the wisest people ever?
Yes.
No.
And he's humble
as
all get out.
Yeah.
And the devil knows that if he can shut somebody up like that, then he's gonna win.
Right.
And then when you, Paul, say, frick that. I'm going to keep talking no matter if I stutter or whatever.
Yeah.
The Lord's going to see you through on that. And then, like you said, from missions, that was a huge success, and that was a huge praise report. And so, I don't know. I think I know why the devil tries to do that, because you make such a big difference on people.
Wow.
Well, and I think the interesting thing too, and this is going to tie in with all of our stories, I'm sure, but when something's going on in your head, we think that everybody else is that's all they think about, and that's all they see.
Yeah,
right?
That was me.
But the thing is that is happening in their head too.
Mm-hmm.
They're thinking about something completely different. So, and again, I've fallen victim to it. I raised my hand first, but
Sure.
it's like it's just wild how much less people think about us than we think they do, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But no, that is so cool, man. Like,
That is really cool.
praise God. Obviously we'll be standing with you and believing that, it just keeps getting better and better until it's completely gone.
Yeah.
Right. And, but man, but I think you brought up a really good point, John, just about how the devil will use things like that. I mean, literally trying to silence you, right? Literally.
Yeah.
I never thought about it that way.
Because
That's-
think about how many people you know. Be honest, you know a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to be able to speak to those people better and more relatable, and you'll just be able to talk to them more than me or Brandon would be able to.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
Yeah. So
if I were the devil, I'd be like, I'm not going after Brandon and John because they only know 6 people.
You guys know a lot more than 6 people.
But Paul knows everybody, and everyone he knows is pretty, most people are influential. Some people are not, but most people are influential. So if he takes down this guy, then he can transfer to the others. So anyways, that should be confidence for you, because, you have an influence on people. So just keep pushing past it, and
it's awesome.
you're taking the right steps.
And honestly, thank you so much. Yeah, no, it's a good opinion. Thank you so much for being vulnerable too.
Yeah.
And we appreciate you being willing to share that. And I know that's not easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm glad that we've created a really cool space for you to do that. But then, I think it's cool how it's like your way of, showing, like you're saying, showing the devil. It's like, oh yeah, you want to try to silence me? Well, I'm going to go on a podcast and, and I'm going to just talk,
Literally.
I'm going to tell, make people laugh and tell about Jesus at the same time. So,
Wow.
man. So we love Paul, man. Paul's the
Love you
best.
guys too.
Man, awesome.
Brandon, what's yours?
You want me to go?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, as a kid, probably right around 6th grade or so, I started noticing just some like coloration in my in one toenail. I'll never forget. I was in 6th grade. Like, that's weird, but hey, I play sports and whatever. It's just no big deal. All right, I'm sure it'll go away. Well, just kind of kept spreading and so with that, grew insecurity, right? Because, I mean, it's actually funny how I'm even sitting now, I'm kind of like hiding my hands just because my fingernails are weird and, discolored and everything like that. And due to psoriasis and, some fungus, whatnot. And so I've dealt with that since 5th, 6th grade or so. And obviously, growing up in Christian school and all that stuff, it is, it's, everything gets noticed, right? Nothing goes under the radar.
High school.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. High school's rough. But I mean, so you constantly putting my hands in pockets.
Wow.
And I mean, it literally kind of what you're saying with how you're talking about you're, always just not wanting to say things and whatnot. For me, it was hiding parts of my body, right? Because I was just embarrassed of it. And I didn't want to get made fun of. So that caused a really, really big insecurity in my life. And so the psoriasis has spread in different areas. Like I have some around on my stomach, like on this section, and I've got some behind my ears and some other just it's just weird. And so, I mean, like you, Paul, I totally am believing for my healing. I stand on it. And, I believe that healing, and for anybody listening, we stand and believe what the Bible says, that Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever.
Right.
Yep.
And we believe that by his stripes we are
We're
healed.
healed.
So we stand on that, and we just keep believing it. So, but yeah, no. So I mean, like it was just, I was terrified because I played basketball in middle school and high school.
Okay.
And so I was terrified of having to take my shirt off.
So how did you deal with that when you?
Yeah, so I so pretty much, so embarrassing, but like if I had to go to a basketball camp, I would go up to a coach ahead of time and be like, hey, just if you do shirts and skins, just put me on the shirts.
Really?
Oh, you would tell them ahead of time.
I would tell them ahead of time, yeah, just because I just so badly did not want to have to deal with that embarrassment that comes from that.
Wow.
So, because kids just
Kids
start
are
asking
mean.
questions. Oh man, kids are
Kids are
ruthless.
mean.
So it's so funny because I've done that for so long. I mean, like I just mentioned, it's just so funny to me that like literally I'm sitting right now hiding my hands, like just because that's just how
your natural posing.
Yeah, just because that's what I've done for so long. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So if you see me at church, don't look at my hands.
So as an adult,
No, I'm just kidding.
did you have any issues as an adult when you got older, out of high school, kind of thing?
Yeah, so I think as I got older, I became more accepting of it, and obviously I don't accept sickness, right? That's not what I'm saying, but I guess maybe I just grew used to it more, and I start, I think as you get older, you start to care less about what others think of you, and so now it's just to the point, well, hey, this is what it is, and I'm standing on my healing, but now I don't care if somebody sees it, and I mean, no, I take that back. I still care a little bit, but definitely not as much as growing up and college and everything like that.
I remember when we went to Iron Fit a couple months ago, and everybody, if you've been following the podcast for a little while, you know that I'm a big gym connoisseur. So is Brandon, and we're trying to get Paul that grind, but but Paul lost a ton of weight though.
Yes, we talked about that.
That's kind of hard.
I need to go to the gym. I do.
But I mean,
we'll get you on a plan.
Anyways, we'll cross that bridge when we cross it. But I like the gym and I like the sauna. So one time Brandon came with me and Isaac, and I remember we went in the sauna, and when you go to the sauna, you just wear your shorts or something, and you just hopped right in there. No worries at all. No insecurities. I didn't even notice anything on you.
Yeah.
And
and that's probably the funniest thing is that you said you didn't notice it.
Right. Yeah. And again, and you didn't notice it when I had my shirt off. And it's just funny how we just think that whenever that thing is exposed,
that's so big.
Exactly.
Right.
That's all people can see, and that's all they're thinking about. And it's like half the time people don't even notice, right?
Wow.
So so that's something that for me that I've always had to deal with, and obviously as I've grown in my relationship with the Lord, that has subsided, just my cares as far as caring what other people think. But but that's something I've dealt with, and it's still an ongoing thing, and you just keep standing, just like Paul. You just keep standing, keep believing.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of one of my big.
We're getting deep, folks.
This is like therapy.
Yeah, it really is.
It's like therapy session. But I think it's interesting to think about like these things that we can see, like you and mine was more, I'll get to mine in a second. Mine wasn't really a physical thing. Mine was more of like a mental thing. But I think it's interesting to see how we each have a unique thing that predominantly people don't notice, but one way or the other, we have something about us that hinders us from being fully confident and secure.
Yeah.
In some parts of our life and some times of our life. And I think it's interesting though, because however bad it is or whatever it is, the Lord can always use it and redeem it to at the beginning of it, you may not understand why you got it and why you had it in the first place. But as you learn to overcome it, and even in the process of still being healed from it, the thing is about it though, I think it's cool because the Lord's like, okay, well, while you're walking out, you're overcoming and you're healing it and stuff, but you can also use this as a tool to reach other people for me,
right.
and share with them like we're doing now,
Right.
Being real and saying, look, we have things that we're, maybe dealing with or overcoming or whatever, but you can do it too.
Right.
Wow.
And so I think like, even though it is a negative thing, it can be used for such a positive, and that positive has a greater result because it's deeper than just us.
Right.
And like, if all we ever think about is this problem, and that's like the first step of it is like, oh gosh, this sucks. You notice the discolor or whatever, and you're like, oh, freaking toe.
Right.
But now we can be like, well, I'm not worried about myself anymore. Now the goal is to tell other people about how they can deal with stuff like that too. Anyways, I think it's interesting.
No, absolutely. No, that's a really good point.
That's really great.
Well, is that all you
your
had to
turn.
share?
Yeah. No, I'm good, man. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So mine is more mental, not physical. But ever since I was little, so I think this stems from maybe being an only child. So don't have siblings, and you don't have people. Yeah, this is what it's from. But you don't have siblings that you play with and hang out with when you're a little kid. But you also don't have siblings to kind of like check you.
Yeah.
Right.
Like when you have siblings, I think if you do stuff that's stupid or annoying or past the social awareness thing, they're like, bro, what are you doing? Or they choke you out or they punch you or something, right? And that's what I hear. So I think it stems from that, me being an only child, where I got two things. I think I got one, the ability to not, okay, well, Isaac sums it up nicely. He doesn't know if I'm socially awkward or just really good at talking to people. Like my outgoingness and my extrovertness. And I think now I'm good at talking to people, but I think at some point it was not being socially aware and not being actually good at talking to people. But anyway, so from that came the result of me not really caring about how extroverted I was and how outgoing I was, but also came from that a thing of like, okay, I also need to get people's approval.
Wow.
By the way I talk or look or make jokes or laugh or whatever. Like my goal, as probably as young as I can remember, my goal is always to, whenever I walk into a room, a new situation, meet a new person, especially girls.
Let's go.
Right. My goal would be to, how can I impress? How can I get approval? How can I look secure, with all this stuff? Because I knew I had the ability to speak without caring about what they think, which is kind of weird when you think about it, that I had an issue with security, but at the same time, I was still good at talking to people and I could pass that I was secure.
Wow.
And so that was an ongoing thing. And I still have sometimes where I have to like check myself and be like, okay, I know I'm like not caring what people think, but am I making this joke in particularly to get their approval right now because I feel like I'm lacking it in some way? So it comes up in small ways every once in a while, and I can notice it. But for a long time, like a kid, the teenager especially, like high school, that was a big time where I tried to really talk, act, joke a certain way to always get people's approval. And it sometimes, I think it started like some minor bad habits through it too, because another thing I'll notice about myself now is sometimes like if I can read the room and understand how this person laughs or this person likes to be talked to,
right,
I can be that way for them and then this way for another person. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so
you were trying to mold yourself into being whatever
adaptable.
It took to
Right.
make people like you or accept you.
You would read the room and then adapt yourself to that.
Correct. Yeah. So Dad always said, see, I get the words mixed up, but I get the point. Thermometer versus thermostat. So thermostat would be changing the temperature of the room, and thermostat would be adapting to what the temperature of the room is. And so whenever he'd tell me that, I would hate that, but it was true. So I knew that was true because I would always be the thermometer. What he said really stuck with me. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'd be the thermometer, and I want to be the temperature with the other people in the room so I could be liked and stuff. So in the last probably...
I was going to ask you in your older years.
In the last probably 3 years, that has been more and more and more and more worked out. I would say it's probably like 97% worked out now because, like I said, it comes up sometimes in small ways. Mm-hmm. But the biggest thing that I found to get over that battle was, one, just knowing the Lord personally and like for myself and actually following the Lord, like intimacy. Mm-hmm. And there's a difference between spending time with the Lord as an idea of something that you have to do, as an idea of something that you have to always gain something from, or as an idea of a practice, versus spending time with the Lord where you actually get a revelation of his presence and the secret place. Yeah. Like people say secret place, and to me for a long time that always sounded cringy, and it probably does to some people still. But it is true because a secret place is something that's just between you and the Lord, and it's something that is sometimes more hidden for a reason because you have to go to a place with the Lord and his presence that only you and him can do together. Mm-hmm. And it's something that I had to let my guard down for. It's something that I had to learn to be kind of uncomfortable with, like it was a switch. So anyways, whenever I started really truly knowing the Lord and his love and his glory and his true character and feeling that, and it being revealed through scripture and him speaking to me through the word and learning more about discernment from the Holy Spirit and all of those things, those were the things that fed the hole that I was always trying to fill.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So then now with that hole being filled and my mind being renewed from the word and actually knowing like how Jesus really is in my life, that helps me not ever really kind of go back into that feeling of I need to do this to get people's attention. Mm-hmm. So now the only thing I really work on is just making sure that I filter my sentences because I really don't care what people think now. Mm-hmm. So now it's in one way it's a lot better, but in another way it's like now I just need to make sure I don't say a filter on certain things.
So you've gone from one spectrum to the other spectrum. Now we need to kind of find that balance, right?
Mm-hmm. But do you think, here's a question for you, because you talked about the approval part, and that was a big thing for you. Do you think at the age you are now, because I always thought for me this was a big thing. So you picked up film editing and shooting on your own. You taught yourself how to do it. You watch YouTube videos and you're really, really good. Mm-hmm. I mean, I tell you that all the time, but you're really, really good.
Thank you.
Did that help? Knowing that you were really good at something? Because you're getting approval from a lot of different people when they see your stuff. That had nothing to do with it.
No.
That's a good question.
I was just curious because I know some people look to things like that
as their approval,
their own personal things as approval. Mm-mm. And I wondered if that ever played into that.
No, that didn't. I can tell you what did play into the approval was probably a combination. Was one affirmation from a girl that I would like, and in one, because I've been at this, like the serious growth part of this in the last 3 to 4 years. So part of that was with Lexi, and then another part of that was just with if I got a girl's attention and she liked me back and she was a reasonable person and loved the Lord. Mm-hmm. And then for the first little while of the relationship with Lexi, that was also like a thing. Approval booster. Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a booster, right?
Yeah. So those things were maybe like 30% of that pie, and then 70% of that was honestly like approval from church. And what I mean by that is I was serving in a lot of areas and I was doing a lot of things at church all the time.
Right.
And I was always doing something at church. And I'm not downgrading always doing something at church. But that was where my source of approval came from, really. Like ultimately, like if I had someone say, "Hey buddy, man, thanks for doing this. You're such a leader. You're such a good dude. I appreciate you being a man of God and stuff." That would be the thing for me where I'd be like, "Oh, I'm doing good. You know, I got life figured out. I'm secure now, and I got things figured out, and hey, I'm all good now." And so that would be my biggest thing, because I would always do a lot of things at church as a substitute as actually figuring out why I was doing it. because you can serve and do a ton of stuff at church. I tell people in the young adults group at church this all the time. You can do a lot of things at church, but if you're never actually filling your internal well with your relationship with the Lord, you'll do all these things at church, and eventually you're giving from a place that's dry.
Right.
And like oil in a car, if the two gears are always, then there's going to become friction and
It's going to burn out.
And boom.
There you go.
Exactly. And so that's what would happen. That's what ultimately happened to me after that time period of when the approval was solely coming from that. And that's when I used that as an excuse to actually draw close to the Lord. And then once I figured out, I was like, well, wait, I'm not actually doing this for myself. I'm just kind of doing it unto men. So then I started doing stuff unto the Lord, and that's when it became better.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, that's amazing.
Well, it's interesting. As all three of us have talked, I think the one common denominator, and I think literally every person goes through this at some point in their life, where they're more concerned about the approval of other people than they are the approval of God. Mm-hmm. And I literally, that's where all of our, maybe our insecurities come from is, man, what do other people think of us or this thing about us, right? And how does that make me feel? And, I think, John, you brought up a good point. It's like when you spend time with the Lord and you really get that revelation of how much he loves you, then it all of a sudden doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Right. What other people think, So I think that that's a testament to you. I mean, obviously you're very, I was going to say you're mature, but
we're kind of getting there. We're halfway there. Oh!
Wow, that was good, man.
Wow. Yeah, Maroon 5, they just put out the best music these days.
Don't say that.
Don't say that,
no,
please.
I knew that would get under.
No.
Oh, should I say that LeBron James is a better basketball player than Michael Jordan then?
Don't say that either.
Okay, so anyways, so I was, as a joke, but John, you are very mature.
Thank you.
And it's cool to hear your, and to hear your testimony and just how your growth with the Lord. And I think that's the answer, right? That's the answer to all of these things that we talked about is when you get that revelation of that love that God has for you, nothing else matters. So there it is.
That's what
guys.
No,
John, go ahead. I'm sorry.
We're out of time. I was just going to go into another rabbit trail.
Okay.
Like father, like son.
Yeah.
He dives off into stuff all the time.
But no, I think that was really great. Paul, thank you Paul was the one who kind of initiated this episode, and I'm really glad we did this. I really respect you guys for being open, and hopefully that encourages everybody watching and listening that, please find people that you can be open and vulnerable with, that you can share these things, so you can work through them, because we shouldn't have to do this alone.
Yeah, and Jason Roy, I'm canceling my membership with you for counseling. I mean, I just fixed everything right here. I'm just kidding. Jason Roy's a good friend of ours, and he's a great counselor. You should hit him up if you need stuff.
Yes, he is awesome. Well, since this has been kind of a more serious episode, I think you should do the outro as serious as you possibly can.
Sounds good.
You ready?
Brandon.
So serious.
Here we go.
Sound of Harley Davidson. Something about America makes me want to crack open a cold Zevia. Because I don't drink beer. Be a mission man or a woman. And go out and follow us. Varmint! I just wanted to make sure I was serious.
All right, well, that's your serious. We got it.
This mic started getting wet. I'm sorry.